I know that it's all about the power. If you can
Yes.
turn the power on in the body already knows what to do. All you got to do is get the power on, and the rest is history.
Hello, wise body and ancient soul. I'm hopping in with a quick introduction for my next guest, Dr. Michelle Peal. The way that she bridges angelic realms and earthly medicine is truly extraordinary. And she's a woman of deep faith. You will hear her refer to God. And I encourage you to, if God is not your preferred name for the divine, simply replace it with your personal favorite: universe, creator, great spirit, divine mother, the unified field, source, all that is. Whatever your personal name is, keep an open mind and an open heart, because this conversation may just totally shift the way you see energy, the way you see the body, and the way you see our life here on planet Earth and this very exciting moment we're in right now. Ready to have a deeper conversation about body and soul, sacred leadership, and our collective evolution? Welcome to the Wise Body Ancient Soul podcast with me, your host, Charisse Sisou. Dr. Michelle Peal is a naturopathic doctor with over 30 years of experience in holistic health, radionics, dowsing, and she has received numerous uniquely divinely downloaded balancing techniques for people as well as animals. She holds a BS degree in computer science and engineering that has helped her to understand the electromagnetic systems of the body. Additionally, Dr. Peal has heard the angels since the age of 4 and receives many revelations to help solve the problems that she encounters. She has numerous clients and projects across a broad range of subjects, species, and problems around the world. Please welcome Dr. Michelle Peal. Where do we even begin? Actually, what I would love, let's start from the beginning. Or close to the beginning. Tell me how you went from your degree in computer science and engineering to the work that you do now.
Well, that's a really good question. I worked in corporate America, for a number of years and did computer consulting work. And, they sent me in when everyone gave up, and that was my job. And, I've heard the angels since I was 4 years old, and I really kind of cheated. I call it cheating. I'd go in and they'd tell me what the problem was, and I would just listen, and the angels would tell me, whatever the problem was, and I fixed it, and I looked like I walked on water, right? And then one day God told me, he said, it's time to go do this other work, what I'm doing now. And I said, well, for a country kid, I'm making a dadgum good living here, I was knocking down 6 figures, not breaking a sweat,
Nice.
And out of the thin air dropped this little piece of, like fortune cookie paper. And I was positive that it was going to say, "You're dead." I just knew that was what it was going to say. And I turned it over, and here's this beautiful script: "To mine own servant, I will not leave thee desolate." And that day, I resigned from the engineering firm that I was working with. And the very next day, I was doing all of the support for DuPont Sabine River Works in Orange, Texas. And I get a call from the plant manager. Immediately, I was challenged on money. He said, "Write your check. What will it take for you to stay?" And so I told him it had nothing to do with money. And there was just dead silence on the other end. And if you couldn't be bought,
Right.
they didn't know what to do with me. And so shortly thereafter, I went and got my doctorate in naturopathic medicine, and I've been doing it now over 30 years, and did all this frequency work with Rife machines and everything for many, many years. And, the angels have been educating me on body systems and, techniques to balance those things and how things really work and what they're dependent on or not dependent on. And so in 2018, when the whole planet shifted from Hertzian frequency into scalar, I took everything that I was doing in Rife and just flipped it over into radionics because that's all scalar energy. So that's kind of, where I am at this point is using radionic reagents and that kind of stuff to help people and that kind of thing.
Oh, I love it. And was that going into, getting your, becoming a doctor, becoming a naturopathic doctor, was that also angelically guided? What brought you to that? Yeah, of course. Of course.
Well, and the thing about it is, if I use 2% of my naturopathic doctorate, that's a lot. Matter of fact, I did my doctoral dissertation on the electromagnetics in the human body, and they had to go outside of the university to get somebody to, critique my dissertation because nobody was doing it. This was back in the early 90s, and you see all this stuff with Young Living, essential oils, and that kind of stuff. That was when they were first coming out. And their big claim to fame was high frequency of their essential oils, Well, I worked with Bruce Tanio out in Washington State, and he produced frequency machines that you could actually test and that kind of thing. And so, I was testing at that time. I used Young Living essential oils, and I was not getting the numbers that they were getting. And so I contacted Young Living because I'm thinking something's happening in shipment, that they're getting irradiated or something is happening that they're losing their resonance. And they got really mad at me and, basically kind of chewed me out and shut me out and said, I wasn't doing it under the conditions that they were, yada, yada, yada. And so I contacted Bruce Tanio. He knew Gary Young personally, and he had worked with Gary Young, and I mentioned it to Bruce. And Bruce said, well, we tested his oil sitting in his living room with my frequency meter. So those were those wonderful conditions, right? And so at that point, I still work a lot with essential oils because they just go right in wherever you put them. I'm a big proponent of that. But as far as product, I'm very not product oriented because, to me, it's kind of a conflict of interest. If you're going to recommend the things you sell, then that's a conflict of interest. So most naturopaths don't like me because of that, because they all just about sell product. So I'm a black sheep.
I imagine that's not a new role for you.
No, not at all. Matter of fact, it's a very comfortable set of shoes. But, I know that it's all about the power. If you can turn the power on in the body already knows what to do. All you got to do is get the power on, and the rest is history.
Yes. You say something. Well, I want to, let's pick up on that because you say on your website, it says that all illness really is a power issue. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit more because I think it's such a powerful way to look at the body.
Well, it's, the body is a series of hierarchies. One thing depends on this, that depends on that. And, if this system goes down, this is like their second string quarterback. This is your backup system. So if you have a symptom, just for an example, people carry a tremendous amount of fluid in their abdominal area. And it's considered by most people fat, but it's not fat, it's fluid. So are you going to be able to work with the fluid? Not directly. Now, can you take diuretics? Of course you can. Can you force the system to drop that fluid? Yes, you can. But at a cost of leaching all of the minerals and all this kind of stuff. And they only want to put potassium back in, but you need more than just potassium. But when you look at the hierarchy of the body, where that's going to trace back to is going to be the liver. If the liver's not doing its job, the load falls to the kidney. And at that moment, the body will prioritize blood over fluid.
Mm.
So that's, you can fight all day long, but if you're fighting the wrong battle, you're always going to lose. And that's the part that, I've worked with for 30 years now. Let's look at the real reason why that's an issue.
Right.
Address that, get the power on, and turn the body loose. What pill are you going to take to turn the power back on?
Sure.
There's certain alignment type techniques that if a muscle, ligament, or tendon is laying on a nerve, you can take pills till pigs fly. But unless you get that muscle, ligament, and tendon off of that nerve, it won't do you any good. And so we have to start really looking at, why is that an issue? Can you take pain meds? Well, of course you can, but that doesn't fix anything. It just stops you experiencing it. And pain only exists where current doesn't flow. It's your body's way of saying, hey, I have a problem here. Let's look at that. So looking at the roots are very much high on my my purview.
Mm. You said something earlier that I want to unpack a little bit, just for anyone who isn't familiar, say, with Hertzian versus Scalar. So you talked about in 2018, there was this big switch. How do you, is Scalar, because I was doing a little bit of research on this, and Tesla talks about scalar energy. Is it the same concept? Okay. Can you tell us more about that for anyone who these are new terms for?
All right. So the easiest way to explain that, I think, and most people have seen the chart where it says the different layers of color and frequency. All right. So I think that's a real common chart where you go, blue is this many frequency and red is this many frequencies, So we all know frequencies on our radio dial and that kind of thing. And really and truly, it's such an interesting subject. So if you go back to the mid to late 80s, where this whole thing about, Gary Young and all of this, I was in a battle with about 3 different movers and shakers about what frequencies the different organs should be, right? And so they were saying, well, the liver needs to be this, and the pancreas needs to be that, and, this organ and that organ. And they were all over the board. I mean, it was just like there was no continuity of circuit at all. And I said, if you think about this body as your house, and if you had an outlet over here that was running at 90 hertz, and this one's running at 110, this one's at 150, you'd be tripping breakers like crazy. And the same thing is happening in the human body when there's no continuity of circuit all the way from top to bottom. So I was in this big hoopla over, the frequency of the organs. And so Gary Young, of course, God rest his soul, he's dead now, but, he and I went toe to toe on that, and we were both using the same frequency meter, but he wasn't looking at the number of people that I was looking at. And so, they were saying, oh, well, a lot of them were under 100 hertz. And it's like, if you're running 105, megahertz or whatever, you're sick. And if you're running under a megahertz, 100 megahertz, you're in trouble. So there was a big hoopla over that. We went toe to toe on that. But I had like 10,000 case studies that proved and documented it all, which he did not have.
Yes. Is this, so it's the same across, it's not like different per body. It's something where across the board.
Well, what you want is, there's going to be variations because there's people, right? I mean, there's as many variations there are people, but there's certain, parameters that it would ride within, So even if it was lower, you would want the circuit to be the same from top to bottom, left to right, front to back. So you had free flow of energy. Even if it was low, you didn't have areas of the body that were unsustained.
Gotcha. So like consistency throughout the body. Okay.
Right. Otherwise, if you have areas that are low, if you think about like electrical current, all of the terms that they use with electrical current, like flowing through your house and what have you, they treat it like water. right? So a high pressure is going to go to a low pressure, a high is going to go to a low. So it flows. So if you have an area of the body that's really low and an area that's higher, then the body's going to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
And you can get away with that for a little while, but ultimately, you know, the whole body system will go down because it needs to be able to go up. And so when in 2018, the whole planet shifted, you know, and went to scalar energy. Well, you know, the angels call scalar energy the divine energy, you know, so everything in the universe is scalar, and it's very much like a wave as it goes through, just like water. And so because we're 70% water, I mean, our bodies were designed to run on scalar energy, not to even mention that scalar energy operates in alkalinity, where your pH is really high. And so when you look at these pHs in the body that are really low, Hertzian frequency operates in an acid environment. And everything that gives us trouble, guess what it loves? Acid.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah. And so you'll see a lot of people that do the different things to raise their pH into the alkaline zones. But, you know, can you do baking soda? Of course you can. You know, you can do a lot of different things, but if you don't set up the dynamic, right? So if the liver's not doing its job and the load falls to the kidney and the kidney prioritizes blood over fluid, what is one of the main jobs of the kidney? To pH balance the body. So at that moment, when it's doing the job of the liver, not pH balance in the body. So the whole point of the exercise is get the whole body up and running, and then you don't have to address those issues at all. That's my point.
Yeah. So then the root, because really then it's that root cause, which is what is the frequency at which the body is operating. So to think of it that way, then scalar is higher frequency than Hertzian. Is that
well?
Fair?
The confusion is they try to say scalar is higher frequency, and it is not.
Okay.
Scalar is a resonance, not a frequency. All right. So if you think about it like this is why I've said it's so important who you surround yourself with, because like say you step outside and it's freezing cold. You stay out there long enough, you get cold. Same thing if you're hot. So that's about resonance. Think about it as friction. You get close enough, it just keeps raising you higher and higher and higher because of the association. And your resonance keeps going up higher and higher and higher, where you don't see that in frequency.
I get it.
So what you want, again, is you want that flow to keep raising you higher and higher. So resonance is what scalar is all about. And so your association, it's like, all right, think about this. I bet you everybody and their dog knows this one. You walk in a room and everybody's having a good time. Immediately, you already feel better because the resonance in that room, you could just pick the energy up like crazy. And conversely, you know, you walk in and say there's a funeral going on. It's like the resonance is not great here, you know, because everybody's depressed, their energy is down and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Sure. So it's really, I love this because I think it's a different way of thinking about energy. And instead of just thinking about it in terms of frequency, thinking of it in terms of resonance, could you call it like an energetic signature? Like just, yes. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great term. Matter of fact, I use that when I teach, you know, checking the energy in the heart. You know, I want to check the energy signature in the heart to make sure that my dowsing is right, whether my radionic reagent is right. You know, so I'm absolutely going to douse to check that I'm in alignment and with that energy signature of my heart.
Well, you just perfectly paved the way to my next question, which is how do you know
we should work
if
together
you're in scalar versus Hertzian, right? Because we want to be in scalar. We want to be resonating with divine energy, right? So how do you
exactly.
Do that?
Well, wonderful, you know, that you asked that question, because your heart always resonates in scalar. Like it, don't like it, it doesn't matter. You know, because, you know, years ago, the angels made a statement, you know, it's not a matter of if, but when something will fail if your heart is not in it. Right. So I've been teaching, everybody that I can, on how to check to make sure that, your dowsing is right. And so, right is not the same word as correct. And I teach this as well because it's so important. Words are important. And how you use them is to your advantage if you understand that the words are different. So right, when you take it back to Hebraic, means perfected and able to stand before God. Correct does not mean that. And so when I'm dowsing, or whether I've gotten a reagent, for radionics, I'm always checking, is it right? Yes or no? And if it's not right, I'm going to make sure that it's right before I go forward with it. So it's super interesting, and easy to do to make sure that your dowsing is right. Because what's the point in dowsing? It's a wonderful thing to have, but it's not worth anything if it's not going to give you right answers. I'm all about getting the right answer. I don't want a answer. I want the right answer. All right. So it's super easy. You put your left hand over your heart. And I have used a pendulum for decades, I guess 40 years, easy. And so I'm going to see what is the energy in my heart. And whatever you get right here, which mine is clockwise, whatever this is, it's going to be your new yes. I don't care what your yes was before. This is your yes, because your heart's telling you this is your yes. And so you take your left hand off. If it stays going clockwise, like mine's going clockwise, then I am in alignment with my heart. Now I can douse anything for the right yes and no. All right, so here's the other thing. The other thing. If it's not, then you have a dual energy system. And that needs to be corrected before you get right answers. This is also a very simple thing to do. Left hand on the heart, right hand over left hand, taking in 3 deep breaths. The angels said, when you're taking in these 3 deep breaths in the nose, out the mouth, focus on gratitude and trust in God. And when you come back and recheck that again, it'll be right. And if it's not, mean what you say and say what you mean. Anybody can just, I'm trusting in God. It's not real. So make it real, and it'll be made right. So these are not hard techniques at all. They're very, very simple. But they're not worth anything if you don't use them.
I love that we are always a heartbeat away from Scalar. We are in Scalar. We're wired for Scalar. Yeah. I think I've heard you say that. And you've also said that dowsing is just one of the most important tools that you can have right now. Why?
Oh, absolutely.
And, why is that?
Well, I mean, the energy is steady ramping up. I mean, the changes, to say that we have changes one right after the other is an understatement. So what might have been fine a moment ago, if you don't recheck it, see, we get into, we're very much habitual creatures. And, we've done things a certain way because we were successful doing that. Right? But you have to allow for this shift in energy. So what was good yesterday may not be good today. Maybe you're out of balance today. Now you need to reset yourself. And so if you don't reset yourself or even check, your yes may not be right. So you've got to be diligent about making sure you're in alignment with your heart and douse these things. It's to me the most important tool you have in your toolbox, but again, not worth anything if you don't use it.
True.
I don't think there's a more important tool to have right now. I douse everything. I don't go anywhere without my pendulum. I promise you. I have pendulums in my pocket. I have it in the truck. I have it in the car. I got it beside my bed. I got it beside the computer. I will have one wherever I'm at. It's like the old commercial about American Express, don't leave home without it. Well, I don't leave home without my pendulum.
That's great. That's great. I
products, chicken products, everything. I mean, we go, one of my daughters will go and go, Mom, check me for this, and it's something she really wants, but it's like, no, that's not right, baby. It's not for you.
It's such a great way to check ourselves. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny.
I want to pick up where you just left off, which is, when we want something to be true, but you douse for it. And maybe your pendulum says which is, I think of it as, the connection with universal intelligence, our intuition, our highest self. We'll be like, we'll give a different answer. How do you know? I guess it's just exactly what you said, which is you test for your resonance first. Is your pendulum aligned with your heart? And then trust the answer that your pendulum is giving you.
Well, I think it requires us to be neutral. That or better, right? I always look at it, if God tells me no about something, that means he's got something better. Why would you settle for something less when you can have something better? So most of the things I'm checking, I don't have an opinion on one way or the other. I stay really, really neutral. And it's like, I just want the answer. And then, when we look at all of the answers, then we know, maybe a direction that we want to go for better health or to correct a situation or what have you. But, I'm amazed a lot of times, I just worked with a project, and it just keeps evolving and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I was checking North America and, the states and what have you, and in Canada, the provinces and what have you. And some of the information that I got, it's like, man, I would have never guessed that, that it would be the way it was, because I didn't have a problem with it being different, but I was amazed at some of the answers that I got. But they were right. I checked when we were all said and done whether it was right, and it was. But,
yes.
I didn't have an opinion on that it should have been a different way. It's just I was kind of surprised by some of the results.
Well, and I think that's key. Exactly what you just said is to be neutral, to go in without an opinion. And in fact, will it impact your dowsing if you kind of are coming? I would imagine it would, if you're coming in kind of attached to an outcome or wanting it to be a certain way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I need ice cream. Oh, I'm so glad you agree.
Right.
And chocolate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, you can make it do whatever you want to do, but then to me, I think you run the risk of not ever getting right answers, when you start overriding this, because again, your body is a habitual creature. So if you constantly are overriding your heart, that's going to bring you a not so good return on your investment.
Right.
I think it's really important that we realize that, our heart would bring us our highest good. And if we're going to override our heart, then ultimately our heart will stop speaking to us. You can speak, but is it listening? That kind of thing. Are you being heard?
Yeah.
So it's like the two most dangerous words a wife can tell her husband. Go ahead. Uh-oh, now I'm in trouble.
What did I just greenlight? Yeah.
Right. It's closely followed by hold my beer. I mean,
That's wonderful.
No, I think again, I teach at Radionics classes and general body balancing type classes, and how the body works, teaching the real holistic anatomy. How do things actually work? And part of that class is teaching dowsing. And a lot of these people have, they've never really heard of dowsing per se. And most of them, all they think about maybe is like water witching, that kind of thing. But they don't have a real understanding that there's other ways of utilizing dowsing, Absolutely. But I teach as many people as will listen and not think I'm just crazy. But, in my classes, could I douse for everybody in the class? In a heartbeat, I could. But that's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is that you learn the skill and you gain your confidence so that you can trust the answers you get and move forward with that confidence, because what if I'm not with you?
Right.
I tell my daughters that all the time. I said, I'm not with you all the time. You need to have the skill and do it yourself. But they like mama to do it rather than them, because I know you can do it. Of course I can do it, but you should know how to do it too, because you don't know when you're going to need it. And I tell everybody that. I said, that's why in all of my classes, I do the worksheets. Could I do those worksheets for everybody in under 10 minutes? Probably. But then you won't chart what's going on in your own body and the changes after we do the energy work afterwards. So it gives you, feedback immediately from whatever technique or sounding or radionics or whatever the technique that you're going to use, gives you immediate return and information on how well that worked for you or didn't work for you. I mean, it's all good information.
Exactly. And that's it. It's information. Yeah.
Yeah, it's information. And it's up to you what you do with that information. But you don't know, you're spitting in the wind and calling it rain whenever you make the choices without any information. I frankly wouldn't trust the tests that we have right now. I'm going to check my own self. I want to know what's going on. Yeah.
And it also feels like it's so timely too, because I feel like in the time that we're in now, it's more important than ever to have that sovereignty, to be able to know what is my truth, what is right for me, because you raised your finger, did that connect with something for you?
Yeah, I think it's imperative. I wouldn't make a step right now without dowsing it first. After I've checked to make sure I'm in alignment, I'm not going to make a step without it. Everything is too critical right now.
Too critical.
I mean, the energy is changing so quickly. Everything is moving at such a quick rate. You need to stay on top of it. And it's like, okay, if I'm worried about a health issue or I'm thinking about doing something with my health, and this body absolutely will make shifts and changes based on the energy that it's in the presence of. So you may have taken a medical test yesterday that is no longer valid today, but then they say, oh, you had this, that, or the other. Make a decision today on something that no longer exists. I mean, what kind of a big old mess will you end up in there? When I tell you, if nothing else, just finding out what's the truth and what's a lie right now is really important. It's kind of interesting if you douse, and you turn on the news. Is that the truth? Yes or no? And if it's not, move to the next thing. Is that the truth? Yes or no? And it's really quite eye-opening when you start looking at that stuff. If it's true and it's something we need to get our hackles up about, then fine. But if not, I'm not doing it.
Well, and I think you said something really key, which is things are shifting so quickly. The energies are changing so quickly that moment to moment, it could be different. And you said this before, what was true yesterday may not be true today. Your yes today might look different than before.
Well, and truth be told, it could change in a moment. I mean, I've watched having conversations with people that the energy got so high, a lot of things just shifted. And so you would, be sensitive to those shifts and go, oh, is that still right now? Yes or no? Before you make any big changes, I would absolutely check it. And if you don't know how to dowse, find somebody who you trust that does till you can learn it.
Yes. Well, and I was thinking of another reason why your daughters might go to you to have you dowse, because sometimes when we know we are attached to the outcome, it can be good. I'll go to my friend and I say, can you dowse this for me? Because I know that I have a little bit too much riding on the answer. And I just want that straightforward so I can, get some feedback, get some more information, more data. Yeah.
Well, I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, and they were talking to me about a client that they had, and so he says, "Would you check something for me?" And I said, "Oh, of course." And so they asked me the question, and I gave him the answer, and he goes, "Ooh." And I said, "Well, if you don't want to know the answer, please don't ask me." Because I'm going to tell you whatever I get, and it's not couched on whether you're going to like it or not.
Yeah. That's true.
Truth is still the truth. You have to tell me up front if you want me to lie to you, and it costs more because I have to keep up with it.
It does. It does. I'm wondering, I'm going to take the conversation a little bit different direction, because you've mentioned a couple times radionics. What is radionics? Just for anyone who's listening who might not be familiar with that term.
Yeah, radionics is actually an old tech. I mean, it was brought about by Nikola Tesla. So you're talking, things that are over 100 years old. Now, I use the Kelly Research Technology equipment. And the reason why I do that is, one, I'm going to bring it right back to dowsing. When I switched everything over from Rife into radionics, I probably had 30 grand worth of equipment. But, if the whole planet shifted to scalar, it serves no purpose to continue broadcasting frequency when everything is going scalar. So I made the shift over to radionics because it broadcasts in scalar resonance, right? So it helps build up faster, quicker, that kind of thing. But it's really old tech. Now, you see a lot of digital radionics now. I would not recommend that at all. Okay. And the reason being is because they are computer controlled. It's only as good as the programming. Where when you look at an analog device, the Kelly equipment has like little feelers. If you remember, like years ago, you're probably not old enough to remember, but the old radios, they had like little antenna feelers, and it would go in and out, and that's where you would dial in the different radio stations, that kind of thing. So these are absolutely physical, mechanical, analog type devices. And when I was dowsing, the angel says, this is the one that you need, that it's clean. The people behind it have high integrity, and they stand behind their work. And matter of fact, Ed Kelly and his sister, they're second generation radionics, and they were on the ground floor of like the Hieronymus machines, which are the 2-dial, 2-bank systems. So, they come from a family of radionics, good people. But it's broadcast resonance, it's broadcast scalar. So that's the wonder of radionics. And, like when you take somebody's picture, you can use that as a witness, or you can use, DNA of any kind. But when you take a picture and you put it in the witness well, that picture captures the bioresonance of that individual. And so when you broadcast using radionics, it's like having a cell phone number. And if I call your cell phone number is the only one that will ring. So that picture is really, it's amazing what it'll do. And, I have said for many years now that there is a sentientness to scalar energy, because when you broadcast, a reagent, that's the ones I use are like a glass bottle, and it has a label on it, and it has a plastic cap, and it has the black fluorite sand in it. You're not broadcasting the resonance of plastic to somebody, right? So there's a sentientness to scalar, and when the angels call it the divine, energy, I mean, I think there's something to that, because you're not broadcasting plastic or glass or anything else. So it knows what you want to broadcast. It's really quite amazing.
That's incredible. Wow, that's amazing.
It absolutely is amazing. We have done so many projects that are so interesting, particularly like and I do rice and crawfish. Down in Louisiana, they switch between rice and crawfish. What's rice this year will be crawfish next year. And
Okay.
so the crawfish eat the rice plants and that kind of thing. But you can have rice fields that are planted 3 months apart, and they'll all come to harvest at the same time. And when you take the resonance, you do the checking of the resonance on the first field as opposed to the last field, you can watch the last field catch up to the resonance of the first field, and then they all come up as a unit. It's the wildest thing you've ever seen in your life. I've seen it with cattle, where you'll have cattle that are, calves that are 3 months apart, and they will all look almost like yearlings after 6 months. They all catch up with each other and they come up as a unit. That's why I'm saying, it's really important who you surround yourself with, because if you surround yourself with really high energy people, really connected to spirit people, you'll all come up faster as a unit than if you're standing alone, much stronger together than if we stand apart. So, I mean, there's some really cool principles that absolutely play out, whether it's agriculture, whether it's livestock, whether it's people. Those principles are still valid, irregardless of what you're using it with.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It is. It feels like it's so important. I would say now more than ever to surround yourself
absolutely.
with people who are vibing that way. And would you say, I think I've heard you say this before, that animals, plants, they're already tapped in to Scalar, like what you're describing with the rice. Like the rice isn't going, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm feeling like resonating with the rest of the rice right now. I want to go my own way. They're just tapped in. Well, that's very cool.
Well, what's really interesting too is, we're probably in crawfish season right now. I haven't been out in the last couple of weeks, but when I was out there right at the first part of January, I have a dissolved oxygen meter, so I check the oxygen saturation in the ponds, because if the crawfish don't have enough oxygen in the water, they have to come to the surface to breathe, because they can breathe air or water. They have two sets of lungs. And so, that's something that I monitor to see if there's chemicals present that are causing that problem. Because if the crawfish are up at the surface, they're not down below eating. And if they're not eating, they're not gaining weight, and the crawfish won't get big to fish and sell and what have you. So I check the ambient air for oxygen. And, by all the scientific information, our ambient oxygen in the air runs anywhere from 19 to 21% parts per million. Well, out there where those ponds are being broadcast to 24/7, 365, now this is our 7th year that I've done this project out there, the parts per million were 43.
Wow. That is significant. That's
more than double.
Yeah. That is more than double.
When you
go ahead.
So when you look at the ponds, you can tell right away quick whether or not the oxygen is high, because if the oxygen is high, those ponds are crystal clear. And you're talking about water that's sitting still. It shouldn't be crystal clear, but it is. I mean, you just hardly even have to check. I check for the reason it's like, golly, well, gee whiz, let's see what that is. How high is it today? But when I checked the ambient air, it was 43. It's crazy how high.
What are you broadcasting? Is it a specific?
I have a reagent called super oxygen, and I put that in every broadcast that I make, because anything that you can get the oxygen up with, everything will get better. Whether you're in a healing process or whether you just want things to grow better, it's one of the most outstanding reagents I have is super oxygen.
Would you tell us more about the reagents? I've had the honor of being in the room as you as you received some reagents just even this past September. Could you tell us more about the reagents and how they work?
Well, I'm sure I won't do the divinely downloaded reagents justice, to tell you the honest truth. One of the ones that I got yesterday was for the lymphatic drainage system. Now, did I do y'all with that yesterday? Was it yesterday that we did that, or the day before? I don't think
it
even.
was the day before, when the four of
See,
us were on. That's right. That's right.
yeah. So I don't think you got the latest one, which is the lymphatic drainage. And to me, this one is so exciting, and I'll tell you why. The lymph system, when it's congestion equals confusion, right? So one of the reagents that I got has to do with unlocking the part of the brain where the truth is stored. And so here we go. The order of progression on these divinely downloaded reagents is so important, because they just about tell a story. What's coming next. It's like the precursor kind of deal. So when you look at the lymphatic drainage system, and it's associated with confusion, so the definitions the angels gave about that has to do with congestion equals confusion, and confusion equals seeking / wanting to know that which is not yours to know. So it's not minding your own business. It's that kind of deal that if you have to know to trust, then you're not trusting God. If you have to know in advance to trust God, then that's not trust. That's Monty Hall. Let's make a deal. Show me why I should trust you. Well, that's not real trust. So I think that's very interesting that we would get that kind of reagent, because everybody just about carries a certain amount of lymph in their system, not active. But when you look at what causes the lymph to be, stagnant like that, it always goes back to the liver, and the liver shuts down with the presence of fear, which of course is the opposite of trust. So, you have a liver problem, you could take pills till pigs flew, and it wouldn't make any difference unless you dealt with the real issue, which is trusting God and letting go of fear.
I'm feeling that all over my body as you're talking about it. And it's so profound what you're saying, because, it's almost, as humans, it's like we've been figuring some of these pieces out, but we're still like treating the symptoms. Oh, I'll change what I put in my body. I'll change what I eat. I'll change my sleeping patterns, or how much stress is in my life, or whatever.
Right.
But to really get down to the energetics of it, the root core cause of it. I feel like when you just said that, it like clarified something in my life from like going all the way back. Like, oh, that makes sense.
Many years ago, the angel said to me, it's more important what you feed your heart than what you shove in your mouth. And the heart is where God resides. It's the Holy of Holies within us. I remember, years ago, I don't know, it's been probably 2 decades ago now, but, God told me, he said, when everything was all said and done, no one would be able to stand before him and truthfully say that they could not find me, because if they would have but opened their heart, they would have found me there. So that's why when you balance yourself with your heart, you're getting in alignment with the will of God. And I guarantee you the will of God's going to play out. So I would much rather be in God's will than outside of God's will. That's not a recipe for success. I'm all about success.
Yeah.
I like success.
Yes.
I'm right partial to it, So, one of the things that this year, I just finished a project they said that I was born to do. In September, I finished that. And so I'm sitting here kind of waiting to see what my next marching orders are going to be. And then they started doing this whole thing about how to, integrate the energetics, from the divine into the body, the celestial energies. And, that's what I'm teaching this year. And that's what I plan to teach really at the Dowsers convention and all of that, because it's critical information. And, we've seen patterns that have been emerging that are causing people a lot of trouble, and if we cannot get that free flow of the divine energy into us, then you're operating on your own. I would much rather have a free flow of energy just constantly, washing through and on my body, that I didn't have to do it all by my lonesome. So that's what I'm going to be teaching at the Dowsers convention too, how to test, how to get the blocks removed, because I think that's so critical for us being able to go forward. I don't want to limp across the finish line. I want to run across the finish line. And I don't know about y'all, but I mean, I'm not a big runner, but by golly, I'm going to run across that finish line. It may not be pretty, but I'm running. That girl coming through. I don't care.
I'll be dancing right behind you.
There you go, sister. Come walk with me. Run beside me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some of those patterns that you're seeing, that you're saying, okay, it's time to bring these answers forward, or that the angels are saying?
Oh, yeah. I tell you, there's a huge pattern emerging, and I don't know that this is the exact platform to even discuss this on, but absolutely, some patterns are emerging, and it has to do with bringing those energies into the body. But here's the caveat on that. In order to bring those energies into the body, you must be scalar. And if you're not scalar, they've shown me a picture that looks like mist. If you think about it, it's like a veil, and the energies are right there. But because the body isn't prepared to receive that kind of energy, if it's scalar of higher resonance, you cannot interject that into a Hertzian operating body. It would actually cause you distress. And, God's not about to cause you distress. So you really have to have the body prepared. It's not that God's unwilling to give. You're just not in a position to receive. And so everybody always wants to ask, well, how do I stay scalar? And it's a really good question. It's a pertinent question to address, because how do we stay scalar? We stay in trust, and we kick the spirit of fear out the door and don't ever let him back in again. I don't care what it looks like. That old statement, if God be for you, who can be against you? You got to know that that's the truth. Not hope it, believe it, pray it, but know that it's the truth. And then, that truth does set you free, because if God's backing you up, you don't need nobody else. And then that divine energy can just sit here and flow through you, nonstop, and that's what we're after, because that's when you see the rejuvenation, the renewal. Everybody wants to look young and youthful. That's how you do it. You maintain it, and you just keep the volume going up and up and up. And it absolutely will happen. There's no two ways about it. And, I've watched people this year that you almost watched them transform their age right in front of your eyes. And I've also seen people that aged right in front of my eyes, because as they stay Hertzian and the planet is not supporting Hertzian anymore, they're on their backup battery, and that battery's going down. And if they don't make the shift, they're not going to make it, period. And it's not being ugly. I mean, it's just sheer math. Out of gas, you're out of gas.
Well, and I just want to highlight what you just said, which I think, just to reiterate that point, with the Earth going scalar, if we're still running Hertzian, like normally we would be resonating with the Earth, and there would be that resourcing of energy. I'm sorry, I'm getting it as you're talking about it. But if we're running a Hertzian system, it's just us little battery lonesome, right? That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there's a joke in Louisiana, the loneliest place in Louisiana, by yourself.
That's a good one. But
so we don't want to be by yourself. I'm telling you.
Good.
But I tell you, I'm excited about what's coming down the pike. I really am. The resonance just gets higher and higher and higher. They said to me, I guess it was like 2 years ago now, that no one alive knows how this body's supposed to work. And the angels would not have said that if we weren't going to see it. I mean, they're not like that. Well, nobody alive knows how this body's work. Like, you can't see it. No, it's there to encourage us how to go forward. What's coming next is just more than we can even, imagine. And I've looked at this kind of stuff, and, God would come in and say, don't limit me by what you can think of. Yes, sir.
Isn't that the truth? That's the part of that trust too. We can't by ourselves. We're so, yeah, by yourself. It's rather than connected, right? It's like we can't we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And I think that's also another, just to bring in the dowsing again, it's like that's another reason to be checking in with that heart's truth, because the answers are not all here. They're not. This is actually very small brain compared to, when we trust. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that statement, you're talking about the brain. Do you know that there's neurotissue in your heart? There's a brain in your heart. And if the heart and brain are not connected, then this one just goes willy-nilly on whatever it wants. It has no governorship. But when the heart and the brain are connected, which I actually have a divinely downloaded reagent that is just for that, the heart-brain connection, those are phenomenal. Those are absolutely phenomenal. But when you can reconnect to your heart and it is actually, God is in charge of this right here, it's amazing what happens. And not only that, not just your thoughts, but your overall body function changes. And it starts operating the way it was designed to. So there's some really interesting things.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. You have given us so much to think about and allow to gel in our bodies and practice our dowsing with. Any final thoughts, like one last pearl of wisdom, if there's anything that people remember from our conversation today, what would you love that to be? Is there a message that the angels have for us today? Anything that you want to offer?
I think that there's something coming, and they've talked about it in the last, couple, 3 weeks. We've talked about this too. There's something coming. There's a big thing coming that is really going to challenge us. And I consider it almost like a final exam. They have not said what it is. I don't know what it is. Don't ask me what it is, but I feel it coming. And so my best advice is, no matter what it is, no matter what it looks like, trust God and he'll bring you through it. They said your choice will determine your destination. So whatever happens, trust God. He's got it. I promise you, he's got it. If there's only one thing you can remember about what I've said today, let it be that.
Yeah,
because I can't give you better advice.
That's powerful. Oh, I felt my whole body. I got my full body yes when you said that. There is that final exam coming, and it really is about choosing love, choosing trust, choosing God. Over fear, because I think the other what I'm getting is like it'll be real easy. We'll be tempted to run to the fear, right?
Yes.
I think there will be a lot of there will be a lot of messages that's like, and that's when it's surround yourself with your super friends.
If you take and you douse when that thing happens. Is this a problem for me? Yes or no? Is God in charge? Yes or no? Do I need to concern myself with this? Yes or no? And then trust your answers. Check and make sure you're in alignment with your heart and go from there.
Right.
I can't give you better advice.
I think that's really,
I promise you that's what I'm going to do.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, my heart is so full. My brain and my heart are full. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all of your wisdom, Dr. Peal. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I consider it an honor to visit with you, as well as anybody who might hear this. I hope it helps somebody. If it even helps one person, it's worth it.
Absolutely. That is my wish as well, and intention. Thank you.
You're so very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Wise Body, Ancient Soul. I hope it reminds you how magical and powerful you truly are. Kindly subscribe, rate, and review this podcast so more juicy light bringers like you can hear these transmissions. And if you're looking to connect more deeply with your body and soul's wisdom, visit CharisseSisou.com to learn how else we can play together. Here's to your joy and wild success, from my heart to yours. I love you. Take what you need and pass it on.